The sacred weekend. The 1950s in Britain were a time when the weekend felt truly special. After a long week of work and school, Saturday and Sunday weren't just days off. They were rituals, predictable, familiar, yet filled with joy. Families didn't scroll through phones or binge-watch TV. Instead, they created real memories together. The rhythm of the weekend was something everyone shared, and it gave life a sense of order and warmth that feels rare today. 1. The milkman and Saturday mornings. For many, the weekend began with the gentle clink of glass bottles at the doorstep. The milkman was a trusted figure, delivering not just milk, but also cream, butter, and sometimes even gossip from the neighbors. Children raced to the door, hoping to be the one to fetch the bottles, and if they were lucky, sneak the cream off the top before the birds did. That sound, bottles rattling in the crate, was the soundtrack of a Saturday morning. Today, supermarket cartons don't carry the same magic. Second Saturday morning cinema. If you were a child in the 1950s, Saturday morning meant one thing: the cinema. Across Britain, local ABC and Odeon cinemas ran children's matinees. Queues of excited kids clutching a few pennies of pocket money lined up for cartoons, serials, and cowboy films. The atmosphere was electric. Sweets passed down the row, kids cheering when the hero appeared on screen. It was noisy, chaotic, and unforgettable. Parents knew exactly where you were for a couple of hours, and you came out buzzing with stories. Third Street games and play. Not every child could afford the cinema, but the streets themselves were playgrounds. Pavements were alive with games of marbles, hopscotch chalked onto the ground, and skipping ropes swung by giggling children. You could hear the chant of rhymes echoing down terraced streets. Football was played with tin cans if there wasn't a ball, and neighbors didn't mind. They watched with a smile. It was a time when the streets felt safe, alive, and owned by children. 4. Football on the radio. Saturday afternoons were sacred for another reason: football. Before wall-to-wall TV coverage, families huddled around the wireless for the latest scores. The sound of "It's a goal at Highbury" or "A result from Old Trafford" made listeners lean closer. Dads scribbled the pools on scraps of paper, hoping for that life-changing win. Even if your team lost, the ritual of gathering for the results was unmissable. Today's instant apps and alerts lack that drama of waiting together for the announcer's voice. 5th Butlin's holiday camps. For many families, weekends and holidays meant one magical phrase: "We're off to Butlin's." You didn't fly abroad, you took the train to Skegness or Minehead, and you didn't miss out, you gained memories. Butlin's was Britain's playground, with redcoats leading the fun. From talent shows to communal dining, the whole camp felt alive. Kids made friends, parents joined in dances, and everyone went home sunburned, tired, but happy. The food wasn't fancy, but the laughter was priceless. 6. Seaside promenades. Even if you couldn't afford Butlin's, the seaside was always waiting. A walk along the promenade in your Sunday best, ice cream in hand, fish and chips wrapped in paper, gulls crying overhead, donkey rides on the beach, Punch and Judy shows, and hours lost in the arcade. Rain never stopped anyone. Families huddled under umbrellas and carried on. The British seaside was messy, noisy, and unforgettable, and no foreign holiday could match that sense of belonging. 7th. Village fairs and parades. Many towns had their own fairs or Whit walks, streets filled with brass bands, tug-of-war competitions, cake stalls, and maypole dancing. Children wore their best clothes, neighbors greeted each other by name, and the whole community turned up. It wasn't about money raised, it was about being together. Today's festivals may be bigger, but they rarely carry that same sense of intimacy, of knowing almost every face you passed. 8. The wireless and family entertainment. Saturday night and Sunday evening were often spent around the radio. Families tuned in to the BBC Light program, comedy, drama, and music filling the living room. Al Red's monologues, Morecambe and Wise's early banter, or even live concerts broadcast across the nation. The idea that thousands were laughing or gasping with you at the same time gave a sense of unity. Miss a show and you waited a week. That urgency made it special. 9. Pantomimes and ice shows. Weekends in the colder months didn't mean boredom. Local theatres hosted pantomimes where children shouted, "He's behind you," until they lost their voices. Costumes were wild, jokes were old, but families roared with laughter every year. Ice shows added sparkle, with fairy tales performed on skates. For many children, these were their first glimpses of live entertainment, magic that no television could rival. 10. Cycling and cricket. When the weather allowed, families took to bicycles, riding through quiet lanes and countryside hedgerows. No helmets, no trackers, just wind in your face. Village greens came alive with cricket matches, spectators sipping lemonade while children joined in with improvised bats. It wasn't about winning, it was about being together. Today's organized leagues and schedules don't capture the same spontaneity. 11th Sunday, rituals and tea. And then came Sunday, a day that felt slower, gentler, and deeply rooted in tradition. Church parades filled the streets with uniforms, banners, and brass bands. Later, families gathered for the Sunday roast. Beef or lamb, roast potatoes, and vegetables piled high. In the evening, tea time brought sandwiches, Battenberg cake or pork pies, all served on lace cloths with clinking china. No one stared at screens. People made eye contact, laughed, and listened. Even the silences felt full. These weren't just routines. They were the heartbeat of post-war Britain, rituals that stitched communities together. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Today, weekends fly by in a blur of scrolling and errands. But in the 1950s, every moment mattered because it was shared. Would you trade your Sunday scroll for a seaside promenade or a Butlin's sing-along? Tell us in the comments which 1950s memory you'd bring back. And don't forget to like and subscribe to keep these stories alive.